column support really doesn't fall into that category of revolve so much that we still have to use the base circle, and we have a radius of 16 from that point. So to generate this triangular shape and its geometry, we're going to have have some construction going on. So this is just going to be the boss build-up. And then a couple of things that we'll utilize is the circular pattern for the 3 ribs. And then we'll look at some of the different manufacturing processes, since this is more than likely a casting. Whatever this is supporting, we would want to look at possibly some different geometries, maybe a little more taper, maybe not as thick, some different types of reliefs to improve the manufacturability. So let's go ahead and open up a sketch on the front plane. And this is in metric, so File, New, Part Metric. So front plane sketch. And for the construction of this triangle, I'm going to put in the base circle, and I know that it's going to be for construction. It has a diameter of 127. And I'm going to go ahead and make this contour and region just to simplify. So I can find the first quadrant. We have a radius of 16. So that is going to give me a diameter of 32. So picking on the circle, 32. And then we'll go ahead and select. Underneath the linear sketch pattern, go to the circular sketch pattern. Make sure it's 3, and we'll go ahead and accept. Alright, so one thing with linear and circular sketch patterns is they don't go, well, occasionally they will go fully defined, but most of the time you have to do one additional item. And then the other thing is, by moving and reapplying the coincident, it is nice that it reminds me that I really don't want that center. In most cases. In this case, let's undo. Since this is going to be part of the pattern, but not the whole pattern, well, that's not a good way to put it. If this is going to be part of the pattern, I can drag that center point back to the origin, and it will go fully defined. So in this case, yeah, we'll go ahead and leave it. Alright, so to generate my triangle, we're coming off the circle tangent, going to another circle tangent, so I see the coincidence, so I see the tangency. I get the inference, I'm getting coincident and tangent. And one more should be from quadrant to quadrant. Alright, so the one that's in blue, if I highlight that blue line, I have the coincidence but not the tangent. So the line's highlighted. I'm going to hold down the control button and select the circle, and then I'm going to force the tangency. Okay. So that gives me my shape. We're going to do features, extrude. Now I could trim those out, but again I have the contour and regions, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick the inside the triangular shape, and then inside the 3 circles, and we have a depth of 12 millimeters. And that'll give me my base. Alright, so the next question would have been, well, we have those 3 circles that are 12 millimeters. Do we include it as the first feature, or do we make them separate? We can always adjust it and change it again later. So Control-1 to get back into the front view. I'm going to right-click on the sketch and edit the selection. And because I'm making this this change, we're going to have to watch out for potential errors that the region that I selected may have some kind of conflict with it. So selecting the first circle, Control selecting the second and the third, we're going to go to the pop-up and make equal. Then when I apply the dimension of 12 millimeters, they'll all adjust, they'll all go fully defined, and we'll see what we get. Alright, so we have the holes included. If I decide I don't need them, I can always go make them construction circles or delete them. Alright, so the boss is coming up from that face 38 millimeters. So we're going to open up a sketch. Get it reference to the origin. 38, oh no, that was the height. The diameter is 63.5. Features, extrude. The depth is called out as 32, so I can't really include the bore. And plus it has the limit dimension, so what they don't tell us is if they're going to include the drill, a drill point, or if it is going to be flat bottom. So the assumption is that it will be flat bottom. If we don't see a depth, it's assumed through. And if it's not called out with some kind of detail illustrating a drill point, we're going to make the assumption that it's flat. So 38 millimeters. Go ahead and accept. Open up the next sketch. On the end face, it rotates into position. Go grab the smart dimension. My maximum material condition would be the smaller number, 38.02. We're over into the tolerances, setting a limit dimension, and the limit will be 0.08. Alright, features, extrude cut, 32 millimeters. Alright, so the ribs are at kind of a weird angle at the 120 marks, so really we want to utilize the right plane. So one of the things that, well, let's go into the right plane. One of the things that we have to watch out for is where a rib would intersect the cylinder. The cylinder is falling away, and so we're not going to be able to bring it right up to the edge, or if we do bring it right up to the edge, then we're going to have to extend into the rib a little bit to give it enough geometry to make that blend. All right, so I'm going to start the one, and then I'm going to overrun. So this is going to be example 1. And you can take your pick of which one you want to finally put into your model. So from the silhouette edge, if I can locate it, let's go to the point. All right, not picking up that that cylinder. Usually there's a silhouette edge there, so let's go with the point or the entire line. So 19 millimeters on the depth. And I'm just going to go 0.5 millimeter into the cylinder, and now let's go 0.5 millimeter below it. Then we'll be able to see the geometry as it builds out. All right, so thickness of the rib is 10 millimeters. Blind in condition, no, we want to stay mid-plane. 10 millimeters. And we'll go see what that looks like. All right, so as that's falling away, we have just a little bit of an intersection, just a little bit of a lip, and could bring it up closer to the 5 millimeters, or to the from the 0.5 millimeters. All right, the other option would be then to, we'll take that 0.5 millimeters off. I'm going to remove the coincident. And if I go all the way to the edge, okay, found the coincident. And for reference, we'll just go out 0.5 millimeters, and we did not find that point. And for some reason, I'm not getting my silhouette edges. And I hope that doesn't have to do with the options that we did in that very first video today of display. And at some point, no, those are visible. Now let's try the highlight all edges. Okay, so under the options, document properties, and it was under the, system options, I was under the display. Instead of the highlight, it was dynamic highlight from graphics view. So since this was a new installation, it wasn't previously picked up. So I went into the help, typed in the first couple letters, and got close enough to find out where to make sure that that's turned on from the help files. All right, so what that should do now is as I drag along that edge, now I'm looking for a specific symbol or the edge to highlight. And it's still not quite it. Let's rotate over and see if it'll come up from, so where the plane intersects that cylinder, there should be an edge defined in the geometry. So I hope it's not my graphics card that's holding it up. Alright, well, since that's not cooperating, I'm going to go with the circle and the endpoint. And if we go coincident, well, coincident has the unfortunate that it is a coincident with the edge, but if we pierce it, that means that even though the circle is perpendicular to the plane we're sketching in, or in a different plane, that it will allow us to apply the relation. Alright, so let's go ahead and accept it since we already have, maybe. We already have that feature. Alright, so on the preview, there is a single point of contact. So even though that builds out, I should have made it a little bit deeper. Well, let's unmerge the result and we'll see what's happening. So as the curve's falling away from the rib, we're ending up with a gap, and then that body touches that body at a single line or a single point. So let's edit the sketch. And even though I built that one out that time, really need to have excuse me, have an intersection into the part to make sure that it has that overlap. Oh, it didn't finish. Okay, there we go. And we'll put another 0.5 millimeter on it. Go ahead and accept it. And it will still be two solid bodies because I unchecked the merge result. So by verifying that that was the issue, I then have to go back in, edit the feature, and check to merge the result again. Alright, so now it builds out, it fills in the gap, has enough to close it off, and we could reduce that down to almost nothing as long as we don't interfere with that that contact point. All right. In addition, I'm just going to suppress that one out. So whichever of those will work. All right, right plane and sketch. For the rib command, I just need to create the geometry. Ah, there's the silhouette edge. It finally came up, so I'm not sure what was going on. But that little cylinder with a line through it is telling me that I can pick an imaginary edge where the plane passes through that cylinder, and there will be two solutions for it. So let me put in the 19 millimeters. And so there will be one at the bottom, or on one side of the cylinder. Let's see, is it going to cooperate on this side? No. Figures. Let's see if we're still getting it up here then. No, it popped up. I saw it. I have it on video. Alright, so let's drag the endpoint and see if we can get it. Well, that's strange. I'm hoping that you're going to get your silhouette edges without any issues. Let me get out of the sketch just real quick. And there it is again. I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, I want to make that coincident. And then I'm going to bring it. Let's see if we can get to 0.2 millimeters. Alright, so about not quite 10,000. So, yeah, if we went 0.25, that would be pretty close to 10 thousandths of an inch. So, go with that. We're going to go back into the features, select the rib. It's showing us the direction. It doesn't have to be closed off. It's going to find the geometry. I do need it contacting so that I can have those dimensions in. Otherwise, it could remain open. 10 millimeters, setting the direction. Let's see if it intersects. Did not intersect the existing model. And the extrusion direction. No, I think all the settings are there. If it comes down to it, it's going to be this dimension. So let's go to the 0.5 millimeter. And we are on mid, 10 millimeters. Because if I flip the side, well, that's changing it. There's nothing in that direction. No, that's an interesting color. All right, let's see what it does. And still not quite happy. Alright, so let's go to 1 millimeter and see if that satisfies it. Alright, so ribs going into cylinders have their share of issues. Alright, so notice this geometry is more of a fingernail geometry. It's not squaring off the ends, it's following the curvature around. And so we had to dip a little bit deeper. I was thinking we could get closer, but we had to dip a little bit deeper. Alright, so for our circular pattern, whether it was the boss extrude or the rib, we have the temporary axes. So under View, Hide Show, we can go with temporary axes. If you come over to the Hide Show in the top toolbar, we'll show the temporary axes. Linear pattern, arrow underneath goes to circular pattern. The axis of revolution, I like to choose first, so usually I pre-select it, so it's already in there. There are going to be a total of 3. And the feature is going to be, we're going to come over to the flyout, pick the rib, and complete the geometry. And then after we're through, the cleanup is to go back and turn the temporary axes off. So it's a clean looking rib, but manufacturing wise, it's kind of a pain. Right? We'd have to set up on an angle and do the blends, bringing this down after we remove the material. At the very least, if we're going to stay with this geometry, then we need to put a generous radius so that we can machine. If this is a casting and all of this is rough cast and not going to have any finished machining to it, then we kind of sort of don't care. You know, it can stay with the sharps or whatever's in the pattern that was used to make the casting. Alright, so if I go with fillet, that was 38 millimeters, so we'd probably want to be somewhere in the 6 to 7 millimeter. 6.35 would be 1/4 of an inch. So 6.5 to give it a little bit of relief. So quite a bit bigger than what they started off with. I'm going to say I don't see a radius call out. Oh, there it is, radius of 3. So a little bit more. And actually, I'm figure out where that one came in. 127. Well, it could be a radius of 3. We're going to make that bigger so that if we have to machine it, we have extra to work with. All right, so the lower side and the out. Again, we don't want to pick the face because everything attached to the face will get a radius. All right, so fillet, and we'll go 3 millimeters this time and blend. Okay, so kind of makes it a little on the busy side to generate that that geometry.